The fluorescent lights flickered overhead at O'Hare International Airport's Terminal 3 as the German Shepherd's bark cut through the morning bustle like a knife. Titan, normally the picture of disciplined calm, had transformed in an instant. Hackles raised, teeth bared, his powerful body blocking the path of the uniformed pilot who stood frozen in shock. "Control your dog, officer," Captain James Harrington snapped, his hand clutching his flight credentials. "I have 243 passengers waiting to board a transatlantic flight that's already delayed." Officer Michael Reeves tightened his grip on the leash, feeling the stares of countless travelers and the burning gaze of his supervisor. In 15 years of law enforcement, he'd never seen Titan react this way to airline personnel. The dog wasn't just alerting, he was refusing to let the pilot pass, as though his very instincts screamed danger. What nobody realized in that moment of confusion and mounting tension was that Titan's unexplainable behavior would uncover something so devastating that within hours, every person in that terminal would be running for their lives. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments, along with the city you're watching from. Now let's continue with the story. Officer Michael Reeves hadn't always trusted dogs the way he trusted Titan. Growing up in South Chicago, he'd been savagely bitten by a neighbor's Rottweiler at age 8, an experience that left physical and emotional scars. The fear stayed with him well into adulthood, a secret shame for a man who'd served 2 tours in Afghanistan before joining the Chicago Police Department. But September 11, 2001 changed everything for Reeves. His younger sister, Melissa, a flight attendant, had been aboard United Flight 175. The loss hollowed him out, eventually driving him toward airport security with single-minded purpose. He'd protect what his sister loved: the skies, the passengers, the crews who called airports home. Titanium, Titan for short, had nearly been euthanized at the Cook County Animal Shelter 3 years ago. The German Shepherd had been rescued from an illegal fighting ring, scarred both physically and mentally. Too aggressive for adoption, too unpredictable for service, the shelter staff had scheduled him for his final walk when Reeves visited on a community outreach day. Something in the dog's eyes, a watchfulness and intelligence that seemed to assess rather than react, caught Reeves's attention. Despite his lingering fear, Reeves had requested a chance to work with the animal. The canine training officers thought he was crazy. "This dog doesn't just have issues, he analyzes them," they joked. But that analytical nature proved perfect for detection work. Where other dogs alerted immediately, Titan observed, considered, then committed with unwavering certainty. He'd never been wrong. The January snowstorm had turned O'Hare International into organized chaos that morning. Flights delayed, passengers anxious, staff running on caffeine and shortened tempers. Security Supervisor Diane Coleman moved through it all with the efficiency of someone who'd weathered 23 Chicago winters at the nation's busiest airport. At 48, Coleman had earned respect through competence and fairness. With salt and pepper hair pulled into a tight bun and eyes that missed nothing, she kept her security teams running with military precision. "Just another day in paradise," she'd muttered to Reeves during morning briefing, watching the departure boards fill with delays. Neither of them could have imagined how prophetic those words would prove to be. The rhythmic squeak of Reeves' winter boots against the polished terminal floor had become white noise 3 hours into their patrol. Titan moved beside him with fluid grace, the German Shepherd's dark eyes systematically scanning the flow of travelers. Terminal 3 housed most international flights, creating a kaleidoscope of languages, cultures, and tensions, perfect breeding ground for the subtle behavioral anomalies Titan was trained to detect. The dog maintained perfect heel position, occasionally glancing up at Reeves as if to check that his human partner was still paying attention. January in Chicago meant double shifts, as the brutal weather stretched security resources thin. The morning snowfall had already accumulated 8 inches, with another foot expected before midnight. "Let's check the crew access points," Reeves murmured, turning toward the restricted area where flight personnel bypassed standard passenger screening. Titan's ears perked forward at the change in direction, his body language shifting from routine vigilance to focused interest. They just passed the premium airline lounges when Titan's behavior transformed so dramatically that Reeves immediately took note. The Shepherd's body tensed, his attention locked onto a pilot walking through the crew security lane. The man moved with practiced confidence, nodding to security personnel as he presented his credentials. Nothing about him appeared unusual, his uniform immaculate, his manner professional. Captain James Harrington, according to his visible ID badge, was heading toward the flight deck preparation area, flight bags slung over one shoulder. Yet something about him had triggered Titan's full alertness. A low growl rumbled in the dog's throat, escalating rapidly to determined barking as he pulled Reeves toward the pilot. "Titan, heel," Reeves commanded sharply. But for the first time in their partnership, Titan ignored the order. The Shepherd lunged forward, positioning himself directly in the pilot's path, his barking now drawing startled looks from everyone in the vicinity. When Captain Harrington attempted to step around the dog, Titan matched his movements, physically blocking him from proceeding further. "Control your dog, officer," Harrington snapped, his face flushing with anger as passengers began to stare. "I have a transatlantic flight departing in 40 minutes. This is completely unprofessional." "I apologize for the inconvenience, Captain," Reeves said, keeping his voice measured while maintaining his grip on Titan's leash. "But my partner doesn't react this way without cause." Harrington's jaw tightened. "Well, your partner is mistaken. I've been flying for American Airlines for 15 years. I don't have time for this." By now, a small crowd had gathered, phones recording the confrontation. Reeves noticed a slight tremor in Harrington's right hand, a tightness around his eyes that hadn't been there moments before. The pilot's gaze darted toward the nearest exit before returning to Reeves with forced bravado. Security Supervisor Diane Coleman approached, her expression a careful mask of professionalism despite the scene unfolding in the busy terminal. "What's the situation, Reeves?" she asked quietly, her practiced calm a counterpoint to the escalating tension. "Titan's alerting strongly to the captain here," Reeves explained, noting that Titan's attention remained unwaveringly fixed on Harrington. "I've never seen him react this intensely to airline personnel." "This is ridiculous," Harrington interjected, checking his watch. "Flight 8862 to London has already been delayed due to the snowstorm. I have passengers waiting to board." Coleman glanced between the barking Shepherd and the increasingly agitated pilot. "Officer Reeves, you know we can't delay a flight because your dog is having an episode. Perhaps he's picking up on something else. Medication? Food?" Reeves felt the weight of the decision pressing on him. 3 years of working with Titan had taught him to trust the dog's instincts implicitly. Titan hadn't been wrong yet. Not when he detected that concealed weapon last year, not when he found the drug smuggler with surgical implants 2 months ago. But stopping a pilot from boarding his assigned aircraft based solely on a dog's reaction? That crossed a line that could end his career. "I'm requesting a secondary screening for Captain Harrington," Reeves stated firmly, making his choice. "Protocol allows for random, additional security checks of all personnel, including flight crew." "This isn't random," Harrington snapped, his face growing redder. "It's harassment. I'm calling the Airline Operations Center." The pilot reached for his phone. Coleman hesitated, visibly torn between protocol and the unusual situation unfolding before her. After 13 years working with canine units, she'd learned to respect their abilities, but this was unprecedented. "Sir, please come with us for a quick additional check," Coleman finally said, making her decision. "We'll expedite the process to minimize delay to your flight." "This is outrageous," Harrington protested, but Reeves noticed how the pilot's eyes continued to dart toward the exits. "The airline will hear about this." "Captain, this can be handled quietly, or we can make it official," Coleman warned. "Your choice." Harrington's shoulders slumped slightly. "Fine, but this is going on record." As they escorted the pilot toward the private screening room, Reeves leaned down to Titan, who had calmed slightly but remained alert. "Good boy," he whispered. "I trust you." Over his shoulder, Reeves caught a glimpse of the departure board. Flight 8862 to London Heathrow. Delayed. He just hoped he wasn't about to make the biggest mistake of his career or prevent the biggest disaster. Either way, Reeves knew that by choosing to trust Titan over protocol, he was placing his entire future at risk. If nothing was found, Coleman would have no choice but to report his insubordination. The reprimand would be the third in his file, enough to trigger dismissal proceedings despite his exemplary record otherwise. Everything he'd built since his sister's death hung in the balance of Titan's inexplicable certainty. The private screening room was austere, white walls, a metal table, and 4 chairs under unforgiving fluorescent lights. Titan sat alertly by the door as TSA Officer Marcus Wong methodically examined Captain Harrington's credentials. The tension in the room was palpable, with Coleman standing near the window, arms crossed, while Reeves remained beside his canine partner. "Everything appears in order," Wong stated, comparing the pilot's license and ID against the database displayed on his tablet. Captain James Harrington, 15 years with American Airlines, current on all certifications and clearances. No flags in the system. Harrington sat stiffly, arms crossed. "As I said, now can I please get to my aircraft? The flight plan has already been filed, and we're burning fuel on the tarmac." Reeves observed silently as Wong opened Harrington's flight bag. Standard items emerged: flight manual, navigation charts, spare epaulettes, reading glasses, an energy bar, and a travel-sized toiletry kit. Nothing unusual. Each item was swabbed for explosive residue, each test coming back negative. Titan remained fixated on the pilot, but so far the search had revealed nothing to justify his reaction. "Sir, would you mind removing your jacket?" Wong asked, his tone professional but firm. Harrington complied with visible irritation, placing his uniform jacket on the table. "This is beyond procedure, even for random screening." Wong carefully examined the jacket, checking each pocket and seam while Reeves watched Titan. The dog's attention hadn't wavered. His eyes remained fixed on the pilot, following his every movement. The jacket inspection revealed nothing suspicious. Airline-issued pens, a small notebook with flight calculations, and a handkerchief. Swabs of the fabric again showed no trace of explosives or other contraband. "Checking with operations," Coleman said, stepping back into the room after using her radio. "They're positioning a backup pilot just in case, but they need a decision within 15 minutes. Pressure mounted in the small room. Reeves felt doubt creeping in despite his trust in Titan. The evidence, or lack thereof, was making him question his decision. His career hung by a thread, with Coleman's report inevitable if this continued without results. "Look," Harrington said, his tone softening. "I understand you're doing your job. Maybe your dog smelled my cat on my clothes. I had to give her medication this morning before leaving." The explanation was plausible. Canines occasionally alerted to animal scents, especially medications with chemical compounds similar to contraband. Wong completed his inspection, finding nothing. "Everything checks out," he concluded. Coleman sighed with relief. "I think we can clear Captain Harrington. We'll note the incident," and Titan suddenly barked sharply, rising to his feet. Reeves had worked with him long enough to recognize this wasn't just persistence, this was escalation. The dog was telling them they were missing something. "Sir," Reeves said carefully, "would you mind emptying your pants pockets as well?" Harrington's expression flickered so briefly, most would miss it. "Fine." He pulled out a wallet, keys, a phone, and some loose change, placing them on the table. Wong examined each item, focusing particularly on the phone. Standard iPhone, no modifications visible. "Satisfied?" Harrington asked, reaching for his belongings. As his sleeve pulled back, Reeves noticed a thin sheen of sweat on the pilot's wrist, despite the room's cool temperature. The man's breathing had also subtly accelerated. "Actually," Reeves said, "I'd like to request a full body scan and an ion detector swab." Harrington froze. "That's not standard procedure for flight crew." "It is when there's reasonable suspicion," Coleman replied, her earlier skepticism fading as she too noticed the pilot's changing demeanor. "I need to make a call to my union representative," Harrington insisted. Coleman nodded to Wong, who stepped forward. "Your phone will need to remain here during the additional screening, Captain." The atmosphere in the room had transformed. What began as an apparent false alarm now felt like the beginning of something far more serious. As they prepared to move Harrington to the advanced screening area, Titan's behavior evolved again. The shepherd pulled toward the uniform jacket still lying on the table, his focus narrowing with laser precision. He's trying to tell us something specific, Reeves said, allowing Titan to approach the jacket. The dog sniffed methodically along the garment, then paused at the collar area, pawing gently but insistently at the left lapel. Harrington shifted uncomfortably. This is absurd. That's a standard uniform issued by the airline. Reeves remembered a case from 6 months earlier. A smuggler had sewn contraband into clothing seams, undetectable through standard pat-downs. Titan had found it then, too. I'd like to examine this more closely, Reeves said, picking up the jacket. He ran his fingers carefully along the collar and lapel where Titan had indicated. Though nothing felt immediately obvious, he noticed the stitching on the left side appeared slightly different, almost imperceptibly tighter. We need the portable imaging equipment, he told Coleman, the kind they use for suspected electronic concealments. You're ripping apart my uniform based on a dog's behavior? Harrington protested, his voice rising. This is custom-tailored, worth over $2,000. Coleman hesitated, then made the call. If nothing's found, the department will compensate for any damage, she assured the pilot. As they waited for the equipment, Reeves reflected on Titan's history. The Shepherd had once detected a memory card hidden inside a hollowed-out pen that contained crucial evidence in a human trafficking case. His instincts ran deeper than any training. The imaging technician arrived with a portable X-ray device, carefully scanning the jacket while they all watched the attached monitor. For several moments, nothing appeared unusual. Then, as the scanner passed over the left lapel, something showed up. A thin, flat object embedded within the fabric, nearly invisible to the naked eye. What is that? Coleman asked, peering at the screen. The technician adjusted the settings, enhancing the image. It looks like some kind of microchip or thin electronic component. All eyes turned to Harrington, whose face had drained of color. Captain, Coleman said, her voice now hard, care to explain what's hidden in your uniform? Harrington's composure cracked. I want a lawyer. As security personnel moved to officially detain the pilot, the scanner revealed something else. The man's passport hidden inside a secret compartment of his wallet. It displayed the same photo, but a different name. Amir Harrington Kaiser. You're not who you say you are, Coleman stated flatly. I am James Harrington, the pilot insisted, his accent subtly shifting. I legally changed my name 15 years ago when I became a citizen. My birth name was Amir Kaiser. There's no law against that. Reeves felt a surge of uncertainty. Had Titan reacted to the electronic device, or had the dog somehow detected the man's dual identity? Was this a legitimate security threat, or had they stumbled into a case of racial profiling, with Titan reflecting his own unconscious biases? The electronic device, Coleman pressed. Explain it. I don't know anything about an electronic device, Harrington Kaiser replied, his eyes hardening. But I know what this looks like. Another Middle Eastern man being harassed because of his origin. Is that what your dog is trained to detect, Officer Reeves? People like me? The accusation hung in the air like a live grenade, threatening to transform a security check into a discrimination lawsuit that would destroy careers and ruin lives. And yet, there was undeniably something hidden in that uniform, something Titan had detected against all odds. The next moments unfolded with breathtaking speed. As security officers moved to handcuff Harrington Kaiser, the pilot's demeanor changed entirely. With a swift, desperate motion, he twisted away from Wong's grasp and bit down hard on something hidden in his mouth. His body immediately went rigid, foam forming at the corners of his lips as he collapsed to the floor in convulsions. Suicide pill, Coleman shouted, dropping to her knees beside the seizing man. Get medical in here now. Reeves lunged for the emergency call button while Wong turned Harrington Kaiser onto his side to prevent choking. Within seconds, the room flooded with airport medical personnel who forced open the pilot's clenched jaw and extracted fragments of a partially dissolved capsule. Cyanide, the lead paramedic confirmed after a quick test. Not enough to kill him outright, but he's going to be in bad shape. They transferred the unconscious pilot onto a stretcher, attaching an oxygen mask and IV line with practiced efficiency. He'll live, but there might be permanent damage to his central nervous system. We need to get him to Northwestern Memorial immediately. As Harrington Kaiser was rushed from the room, FBI Special Agent Victor Ramirez strode in, his expression grim. At 39, Ramirez had the weathered look of someone who'd seen too much in too short a time. His dark hair was cut military short, his movements precise and economical. "The device?" he asked without preamble. Coleman handed him the sealed evidence bag containing the electronic component extracted from the uniform lapel. "We were just about to have it analyzed when he attempted suicide." Ramirez examined it briefly. "Preliminary facial recognition just matched your pilot to a person of interest who disappeared from Interpol monitoring in Frankfurt 3 years ago. His work with certain extremist groups made quite an impression." He looked up from the device. "This isn't just about one man or one flight. Whatever you've stumbled onto here could be much bigger." "We need to search the aircraft," Reeves said, already moving toward the door with Titan at his heel. "Now." The evacuation of American Airlines Flight 8862 created controlled chaos. 243 passengers filed out onto the snowy tarmac, confusion and frustration evident on their faces as they were escorted back to a secure area of the terminal. The specialized bomb detection team swept the Boeing 777 from nose to tail, focusing particularly on the flight deck where Harrington Kaiser would have been stationed. Titan worked alongside the bomb-sniffing dogs, his behavior different now, methodical, precise, each section carefully examined before moving on. In the cockpit, beneath the captain's seat cushion, he alerted. The technical team carefully removed the cushion to reveal what appeared to be a normal part of the seat's mechanical structure. Except it wasn't. "Remote-triggered explosive device confirmed," the bomb technician announced after scanning it. "Sophisticated, low metal content. It wouldn't have been detected by standard pre-flight checks." "How bad?" Reeves asked quietly. The technician's expression was grim. "Positioned here, it would have breached the cockpit floor and damaged critical flight systems. Catastrophic in midair over the Atlantic." Even more disturbing was the discovery of a secondary device, cleverly disguised as part of the control panel. This second explosive featured an independent timer, a redundancy to ensure the plane's destruction even if the remote trigger failed. "It's counting down," the technician noted with alarm. 58 minutes remaining. The terminal erupted into controlled urgency as the bomb disposal team carefully extracted and contained both devices. The timer made the situation clear. Even if Harrington Kaiser had been prevented from boarding, the disaster would still have occurred. Only Titan's extraordinary detection abilities had averted catastrophe. By late afternoon, Northwestern Memorial Hospital had transformed into a fortress. Armed guards stood outside the room where Amir Harrington Kaiser lay connected to a ventilator, his wrists secured to the bed rails. The failed suicide attempt had left him partially paralyzed from oxygen deprivation to his brain, though doctors were uncertain whether the condition was permanent. Reeves, Coleman, and Ramirez stood at the foot of the hospital bed, watching the slow rise and fall of the prisoner's chest. A neurologist had just confirmed that while Harrington Kaiser was conscious and could understand speech, his mobility was severely limited. He could blink, move his eyes, and possibly whisper, but little else. "The devices have been neutralized," Ramirez stated without preamble. "We found both the remote trigger in your uniform and the explosives on the aircraft. What we don't know is whether there are more." Harrington Kaiser's eyes flickered between them, calculating. The failed suicide attempt had left him physically weakened but mentally alert. "Blink once for yes, twice for no," Coleman instructed. "Do you understand?" One deliberate blink. "Are there more devices on other aircraft?" Ramirez asked. One blink. Reeves stepped closer. "How many?" He held up fingers, counting slowly. "At 2, Harrington Kaiser blinked once." "2 more planes," Coleman noted, already reaching for her radio to alert international authorities. "We need locations," Ramirez pressed. "Frankfurt to New York?" One blink. "Paris to Chicago?" Another single blink. "Time frame?" Harrington Kaiser's eyes moved to the clock on the wall, then back to Ramirez. "Today? Tomorrow?" A single blink at tomorrow. Coleman relayed the information immediately, setting in motion an international security operation that would ground and search dozens of transatlantic flights. The coordination would be unprecedented but necessary, given the stakes. A speech therapist had been brought in, providing Harrington Kaiser with a letterboard. Slowly, painfully, he spelled out one word: family. Ramirez's expression remained impassive. "We're aware of your wife and daughter in Virginia. They're under protective custody." Relief flickered across the pilot's face, followed by what appeared to be genuine anguish. With trembling effort, he formed his first full sentence. "They forced me." "Who forced you?" Reeves asked, pulling a chair close to the bed. Over the next hour, a chilling picture emerged through Harrington Kaiser's labored communication. 3 years earlier, while on layover in Istanbul, he had been approached by a woman who showed him surveillance photos of his family, his wife teaching her 4th-grade class, his daughter at soccer practice. The message was clear: cooperate or lose everything. Initially, the demand seemed minor, observing security protocols, noting vulnerability patterns, occasionally transporting encrypted data drives between international cells. Small compromises that led to greater ones, culminating in the plot to destroy 3 transatlantic flights simultaneously. "The network calls itself Ascension," Harrington Kaiser whispered, his voice barely audible. "They're not like other groups. They're patient, methodical. Some operations are planned years in advance." "And this operation?" Reeves prompted. "Phase 1 of 3, came the reply. Simultaneous strikes against 3 transatlantic flights, demonstrating security vulnerabilities despite post-9/11 protocols. My flight was the first test case." The full operational details spilled forth. How Harrington Kaiser had been provided with the specially designed explosives during a layover in Dubai 3 weeks earlier, how he'd installed them during routine maintenance periods when pilots often checked their assigned aircraft. The triggering device in his uniform would have activated once the plane reached cruising altitude over the Atlantic. "Who's running this?" "Names," Ramirez demanded. Harrington Kaiser's eyes registered fear. "The coordinator, a woman. We call her Elena. Last name? Vov? Elena Vov." "Where can we find her?" A pained expression crossed the pilot's face. "Chicago, airport, maintenance facility," he managed, each word a struggle. "Building C. When my flight doesn't go down, she'll know something went wrong. They'll activate contingency plans." Reeves couldn't reconcile the broken man before him with the terrorist they'd apprehended hours earlier. "Why are you telling us this now?" Harrington Kaiser's eyes filled with tears. "My daughter. They showed me plans, not just airports." His breathing became labored. "Schools. Her school. They lied to me." Coleman's phone buzzed with an incoming message. She stepped away to read it, returning moments later with a troubled expression. "We've got confirmation from Frankfurt. The second pilot was apprehended attempting to board his flight. They found an identical device. Paris is still searching their aircraft." "There's more," Harrington Kaiser continued, his voice fading. "Chicago apartment, Unit 512 at Lakeside Towers, Network Safe House." Ramirez immediately dispatched a team to the address while continuing the interrogation. Each revelation painted a more disturbing picture. Ascension wasn't merely planning 3 plane attacks. They were systematically mapping the entire international aviation security system, identifying weaknesses to exploit on a global scale. "Contingency plans," Reeves pressed. "What happens when they realize you've been caught?" Fear flickered across Harrington Kaiser's face. "Elena has operatives inside the airport, not just me." His eyes darted to the window where sunset painted the Chicago skyline in hues of orange and red. "If I don't report by 8 p.m. Coleman glanced at her watch. "That's less than 2 hours from now." "She'll know," Harrington Kaiser whispered. "The operations center has more explosives, different targets." As Ramirez coordinated with the tactical teams now converging on the airport maintenance facility, Reeves studied the pilot carefully. Something still didn't add up. "The device in your uniform," he said. "What made it detectable to my dog? These components were specifically designed to avoid chemical detection." Harrington Kaiser looked genuinely confused. "It shouldn't have been. The components were tested against K9 units in 3 countries." "Yet he knew," Reeves pressed. "He singled you out immediately." The pilot shook his head weakly. "Then your dog is either extraordinarily lucky or extraordinarily good." As they prepared to leave, Harrington Kaiser's monitor began beeping rapidly. His body stiffened, back arching against the restraints as a seizure took hold. Medical personnel rushed in, pushing the investigators aside as they worked to stabilize him. "The cyanide caused more damage than we initially thought," the neurologist explained once the crisis had passed. He's stabilized for now, but he's slipping into a coma. I don't expect him to regain consciousness anytime soon, if at all. Outside in the corridor, Ramirez updated them on developments. The apartment was a goldmine. Blueprints of major airports, security protocol documents, and detailed specifications for the explosive devices. He scrolled through images on his tablet. This goes beyond 3 planes. They're mapping vulnerabilities across the entire global air transportation infrastructure. And our mystery woman? Coleman asked. Elena Vov, 37 years old, former Russian intelligence, went off-grid 5 years ago. Suspected ties to various extremist groups, but never confirmed until now. He showed them a grainy surveillance photo of a slim woman with sharp features and ash-blonde hair. Last known sighting was 3 weeks ago at Heathrow. And get this, she was posing as a flight attendant. Snow fell in thick flakes as the tactical team assembled in the airport's service area, their breath forming clouds in the freezing air. Reeves checked Titan's protective vest one more time before securing specialized booties designed to protect the dog's paws from sharp objects and chemicals. The maintenance facility complex consisted of 5 separate buildings spread across the northeastern corner of O'Hare's massive footprint. Building C is our primary target, Ramirez briefed the assembled officers. Based on our intelligence, we believe Elena Vov is operating a secondary command center from inside. Be advised, the suspect is highly trained and likely armed. We also have reason to believe she may have access to explosive devices similar to those recovered from the aircraft. Coleman approached Reeves, her expression conflicted. I've just received word from headquarters. They're questioning our operation based on, she lowered her voice, potential racial profiling concerns. Harrington Kaiser's attorney is already making noise about discrimination and entrapment. We found bombs on the plane, Reeves replied incredulously. He confessed. I know, but the optics are complicated. A Muslim American pilot detained based initially on a dog's reaction? She sighed heavily. The department's worried about blowback, especially given your history. My history? Your sister, she said quietly. After 9/11, you were vocal about increased scrutiny for Middle Eastern travelers. It's in your file. Reeves felt a cold that had nothing to do with the January night. That was 20 years ago. I was grieving. I know, but if this goes sideways, if we don't find what Harrington Kaiser claims is at that facility. She left the implication hanging. Titan found the devices, Reeves insisted. This isn't about profiling, it's about preventing another attack. The conversation was interrupted as Ramirez signaled the team to move out. 3 groups would enter Building C simultaneously from different access points, with Reeves and Titan joining the main entry team. As they neared the structure, a nondescript warehouse that housed electrical systems for runway lighting, Titan's behavior confirmed their intelligence. The shepherd's posture changed, his movements becoming more deliberate, nose working overtime. He's got something, Reeves whispered into his radio. The tactical team took position around the main entrance. On the 3 count, they breached the door, moving swiftly into the dimly lit interior. The front office appeared normal. Maintenance logs, shift schedules, equipment manuals organized on metal shelving units. But Titan wasn't interested in the office. He pulled Reeves toward a door marked Electrical Access Only, his urgency unmistakable. Behind the door, a staircase led down to a sublevel not shown on the airport's official blueprints. The team descended carefully, tactical lights illuminating the narrow passage. At the bottom, they found what appeared to be a standard maintenance room, except for the woman standing beside a laptop computer, her hand hovering over the keyboard. FBI, hands where we can see them, Ramirez shouted. Instead of complying, Elena Vov pressed a key and reached for something in her jacket. The tactical team responded immediately, 2 officers tackling her while others secured the room. Titan barked sharply, pulling Reeves toward a storage cabinet along the far wall. Check it, Ramirez commanded. Inside the cabinet, they discovered what they'd feared, more explosive devices, at least 20 units, each similar to what they'd found on the aircraft, but with different mounting configurations. Maps on the wall showed terminals across O'Hare with red X marks indicating potential placement locations. She was initiating a data wipe, a technical specialist announced, examining the computer. But we caught it in time. As Elena Vov was handcuffed and led away, her icy composure never wavered. She spoke not a word, her eyes burning with contempt as they swept over her captors. The evidence spoke volumes. The room contained everything needed for a coordinated attack on multiple aircraft, devices in various stages of assembly, airline schedules, security rotation patterns, and most disturbingly, personnel files on dozens of potential flight crew recruits, like Harrington Kaiser. This isn't just about today's flights, Ramirez realized, scrolling through the data. This is a long-term operation, years in the making. As the FBI evidence team documented the scene, Reeves took Titan to each corner of the room, making sure nothing was missed. In the final area behind a ventilation panel, the Shepherd alerted again. Inside was a small hard drive, carefully hidden. One final insurance policy, Ramirez observed as they secured the drive. Outside, emergency vehicles lined the perimeter of the maintenance area, their lights painting the falling snow in alternating red and blue patterns. As word spread throughout the command center, the magnitude of what they'd prevented began to sink in. It started with one pilot, Coleman said, watching as the last of the evidence was loaded for transport. If your dog hadn't stopped him. Reeves nodded, scratching Titan behind the ears. One flight becomes three. 3 successful attacks become a blueprint for dozens more. The Shepherd looked up at him, snow collecting on his dark fur. The operation had been a success, but Reeves couldn't shake a growing uneasiness. Elena Vov's capture had been almost too easy, and something about the way she'd smiled as they led her away suggested this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The debriefing room at FBI headquarters hummed with activity despite the late hour. Maps, photographs, and timelines covered the walls as agents from multiple agencies pored over the evidence seized from Elena Vov's operation center. Reeves sat with Titan at his feet, studying the personnel files recovered from the hidden hard drive. Something still didn't feel right. The pieces fit too neatly, the resolution too clean for an operation of this magnitude. We've identified 17 additional Ascension operatives across 8 countries, Ramirez announced, pinning photographs to the central board. Arrests are ongoing. He turned to the assembled team. The Paris flight landed safely after their bomb squad removed a device identical to ours. We've averted what would have been the deadliest coordinated attack since 9/11. Congratulations rippled through the room, but Coleman remained silent, her attention fixed on surveillance footage of Elena Vov's processing. The woman's composure had never cracked. No demands for a lawyer, no protestations of innocence, not a single word since her capture 6 hours earlier. She's waiting for something, Coleman murmured to Reeves. Look at her eyes. On screen, Vov sat motionless in the interrogation room, her gaze periodically flicking toward the clock on the wall. Each glance lasted exactly 3 seconds, a pattern so subtle it would be easily missed. Time check, Reeves realized. She's counting down. Coleman's phone buzzed with an incoming message. Her expression darkened as she read it. They just finished a deeper background check on airport personnel who had access to Building C. 3 names raised flags, all with connections to regions where Ascension is known to operate. Who? Ramirez asked, joining their conversation. 2 maintenance workers and a security supervisor. Coleman couldn't meet Reeves' eyes as she handed over the report. The third name hit him like a physical blow. Diane Coleman. This has to be a mistake, Reeves said, looking between Coleman and the report. It's not what it seems, she replied, her voice strained. Yes, I have connections to those regions, humanitarian work after my military service. They're twisting my background to create suspicion. Ramirez signaled to agents positioned near the doors. I need to ask you to surrender your weapon, Miss Coleman. This is absurd, she protested, but complied, carefully placing her service pistol on the table. I've dedicated my life to airport security, 23 years without a single incident. Then you won't mind answering some questions while we sort this out, Ramirez replied, his tone professional but firm. As Coleman was escorted to a separate room, Reeves struggled to process the implications. If Coleman was an Ascension operative, everything they thought they knew about the day's events might be compromised. Had she been steering the investigation, ensuring they found exactly what they were meant to find while missing something larger? I need to see the evidence from Vov's computer again, Reeves told Ramirez. All of it, especially anything related to airport personnel. The files painted a disturbing picture. For 3 years, Coleman had traveled extensively during her vacation time: Turkey, Azerbaijan, Lebanon, all regions with known ascension cells. Financial records showed unexplained deposits to offshore accounts. Most damning was a series of encrypted messages between an unidentified sender and a recipient using Coleman's personal email address, discussing positioning assets at O'Hare. "It looks bad," Reeves admitted, "but this could all be fabricated, planted to discredit her once the operation was compromised." "Or it could be genuine," Ramirez countered. "Think about it. Who better to facilitate airport infiltration than a trusted security supervisor? Someone who controls scheduling, access points, personnel assignments." Titan, who had been resting at Reeves' feet, suddenly raised his head, ears alert. A low growl rumbled in his throat, the same distinctive sound he'd made when confronting Harrington Kaiser. "What is it, boy?" Reeves asked, watching as the shepherd rose to his feet, attention fixed on the glass partitions separating them from the main operations center. Through the glass, they could see Coleman sitting at a desk under guard, her expression tense as she answered questions. What caught Reeves's attention wasn't Coleman herself, but her reflection in the darkened computer screen beside her. A slight movement of her hand beneath the table, fingers tapping in a distinct pattern. "She's sending a signal," Reeves realized. "Get everyone out of there." Before Ramirez could react, the building's fire alarm blared to life, sprinklers activated throughout the operations center, drenching equipment and personnel alike. In the confusion, Coleman moved, not toward an exit as evacuation protocols dictated, but toward a secure terminal where the hard drive from Vov's hideout was being analyzed. Reeves vaulted over desks to intercept her, Titan racing ahead. "Diane, stop!" She turned, her eyes meeting his with a complexity of emotions: regret, determination, fear. "You don't understand what's happening, Michael. This goes deeper than you know." "Then explain it to me," he countered, positioning himself between her and the terminal. Titan growled beside him, hackles raised. "They have my sister," Coleman replied, her voice breaking. 3 years ago, she disappeared during a vacation in Istanbul. 2 weeks later, I received a video call. They showed me she was alive, but only if I cooperated." Her hand moved toward her jacket pocket. "Everything I've done was to keep her breathing, including helping terrorists plant bombs on planes?" Reeves asked incredulously. "I never helped with the bombs," she insisted. "My role was information, security protocols, shift changes, blind spots in the surveillance system, things that seemed minor individually." Her expression hardened. "But yes, I knew about the flights. I tried to mitigate when I could, scheduling additional random searches, redirecting K9 units to high-risk areas. Like having Titan patrol Terminal 3 this morning," Reeves realized. "You positioned us there deliberately." A slight nod confirmed his suspicion. "I couldn't warn you directly. They watch everything, my calls, emails, movements, but I could increase the chances you'd intercept Harrington Kaiser." Ramirez had circled behind her, weapon drawn. "That's enough. Coleman, step away from the terminal." "You don't understand," she replied, desperation edging into her voice. "Vov was captured too easily. The maintenance facility was a decoy, enough evidence to convince you the threat was contained, but not the real operations center." She turned back to Reeves. "Why do you think Titan alerted on me just now? The same reason he detected Harrington Kaiser when he shouldn't have been able to." Understanding dawned. "The trigger devices, you're carrying one." "Not willingly," she whispered. "It was installed during a medical procedure last year, a tracking implant to ensure my compliance. But it's more than that." Her hand finally emerged from her pocket, holding not a weapon but a phone with a message displayed on the screen. A photograph of a terrified woman tied to a chair, today's newspaper visible beside her. "This came through 20 minutes ago. They're going to kill her unless I complete my assignment." "Which is," Ramirez demanded, "corrupting the evidence from Vov's hard drive, making certain connections disappear, specifically ties to their primary financial backers and the location of their actual operations center." Her eyes moved to the wall clock. "I have 10 minutes to transmit confirmation that it's done, or my sister dies." The stakes had shifted dramatically. This was no longer just about uncovering a terrorist plot, but potentially saving an innocent life caught in the crossfire. Yet giving Coleman access to critical evidence could compromise the entire investigation, allowing key Ascension leaders to escape justice. "Where is the real operations center?" Reeves asked. "I don't know exactly. Somewhere in the old cargo area on the northwestern perimeter. I only know it exists because I overheard Vov on a call." She checked the time again, panic rising. "Please, Michael, 8 minutes." Ramirez maintained his position. "We can't let you tamper with evidence, Diane. You know that. Then my sister dies." "Or we find her," Reeves countered. "The photo. Are there any identifying features in the background? Anything that might indicate where she's being held?" Coleman zoomed in on the image, revealing a partial view through a window, aircraft tail fins visible in the distance. "It has to be somewhere with a direct line of sight to the main runways." "That narrows it," Ramirez said, already contacting the tactical team. "But we need more." "The old observation deck," Reeves suggested. "It was closed to the public after 9/11, but maintenance still has access. Perfect vantage point of the runways, minimal personnel traffic." 5 minutes, Coleman warned, the phone trembling in her hand. Ramirez made the call, diverting their tactical team toward the observation deck, while mobilizing additional agents to secure the cargo area Coleman had identified. "If your sister's there, we'll find her, but I can't let you compromise this investigation." "Then you've killed her," Coleman replied, her voice hollow. The situation was deteriorating rapidly. If Coleman's sister truly was being held hostage, any delay could prove fatal. Yet the prospect of losing critical intelligence on Ascension's structure and leadership would hamstring efforts to dismantle the organization permanently. "There's another way," Reeves said suddenly, turning to the technical specialist who had been analyzing the hard drive. "Create a corrupted copy, one that omits the specific connections Coleman mentioned but contains a hidden tracker. If they're monitoring the data transfer, they'll see what looks like successful tampering." "It could work," the specialist agreed, "but it'll take time to implement properly." "We don't have time," Coleman insisted, showing the countdown on her phone. 3 minutes. "Then we buy time," Reeves decided. "Respond to their message. Tell them you're delayed by increased security, but will complete the task in 15 minutes. "They won't accept that," she argued. "They will if there's a legitimate crisis occupying security personnel." Reeves turned to Ramirez. "We need a distraction, something that would realistically delay her without raising suspicion." Ramirez understood immediately. Incoming international flight with mechanical issues. Emergency protocols would lock down all security terminals during landing. The plan came together with urgent precision. As Coleman sent the delay message, Ramirez coordinated with air traffic control to announce the fictitious emergency. The technical team worked frantically to create the doctored data files, while Reeves prepared to lead a strike team to the observation deck. "If you're playing us, Diane," Ramirez warned, "there won't be anywhere to hide." "I've been hiding for 3 years," she replied quietly. "Living a double life, making choices that kept me awake at night, all to keep my sister breathing one more day." She looked at Reeves. "You understand that kind of loyalty, don't you? What you do for family?" He did understand. The memory of his sister had driven every career choice, every decision since that September morning. "We'll find her," he promised. "But after that, you have to come clean. Everything you know about Ascension, every action you took on their behalf." As Reeves and Titan prepared to move out with the tactical team, Coleman caught his arm. "There's one more thing you need to know," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "When this is over, when my sister is safe, I'm not the only insider at O'Hare. There are others, placed years ago, integrated so completely you'd never suspect them." "Names?" he pressed. She shook her head. "I only ever dealt with Vov, but I overheard things. References to someone highly placed, someone with access to flight plans, passenger manifests, crew assignments." "Another pilot?" "Higher," she replied. "Someone who could override security protocols if necessary, someone beyond suspicion." The implication sent a chill through Reeves. If Ascension had infiltrated upper management at one of America's busiest airports, the threat was far from contained. But first, they needed to resolve the immediate crisis. finding Coleman's sister and securing the real operations center before Ascension could eliminate evidence or activate contingency plans. The old observation deck stood like a forgotten sentinel above O'Hare's sprawling runways. Once a popular tourist attraction where families had gathered to watch mammoth jets take flight, it had been shuttered after 9/11, deemed a security risk in the new age of heightened vigilance. Now it served only maintenance personnel who occasionally needed access to the communication equipment housed in its dusty interior, the perfect location for holding a hostage, isolated, with commanding views and multiple escape routes. Reeves led the advance team through the service corridors, Titan moving silently ahead. The German Shepherd's behavior had shifted into full tactical mode, ears forward, body low, each step deliberate as they approached the deck's main entrance. Behind them, 8 FBI tactical specialists moved in tight formation, their communications limited to hand signals. The element of surprise would be their only advantage against captors who might execute their hostage at the first sign of rescue. Movement inside, the point agent whispered, his thermal scanner detecting multiple heat signatures beyond the weathered door. At least 4 individuals. 1 stationary in the center, likely the hostage. Reeves checked his watch. They had 7 minutes before Coleman's extended deadline expired. 7 minutes to secure Coleman's sister before her captors realized the deception. He studied the schematic of the observation deck one final time, noting potential positions for snipers and the location of a secondary exit through the maintenance shaft. If the hostage takers attempted to flee, that narrow passage would be their most likely escape route. Alpha Team takes the main entrance. Ramirez directed through their comms. Bravo secures the maintenance exit. On my mark. The breach happened with explosive precision. Flashbang grenades disoriented the captors as the tactical team stormed through both entrances simultaneously. Voices shouted commands in the swirling chaos. FBI, on the ground! Hands where we can see them! Reeves entered with Titan, the Shepherd moving protectively ahead as the smoke began to clear. The scene materialized before them in fragments. 3 armed men in airport maintenance uniforms, a woman bound to a chair in the center of the room, her face bearing the marks of prolonged captivity and fear. One of the captors had managed to position himself behind her, a pistol pressed against her temple. "Stand down or she dies," he shouted, using the hostage as a human shield. "I want safe passage out of here. Helicopter on the roof now." The standoff crystallized in an instant. Tactical team members with weapons trained, the remaining captors face down on the floor, and the final kidnapper using Coleman's sister as leverage. Her eyes were wide with terror, silently pleading as the barrel of the gun trembled against her skin. "That's not going to happen," Ramirez replied calmly from his position near the entrance. "You're surrounded. Your operation is compromised. The only question is whether you leave here in cuffs or a body bag." The captor's response was to tighten his grip, yanking back the woman's head to expose her throat. "I'm not bluffing. Helicopter in 5 minutes or her blood is on your hands." Reeves assessed the situation with the clarity that came from years of high-pressure decisions. The man was experienced, maintaining distance from potential rush attacks, keeping his back to the wall, using the hostage effectively as cover. But his eyes betrayed mounting panic, the growing realization that he had no viable exit strategy. "Your name is Samantha, right?" Reeves addressed the hostage directly, his voice steady. "Your sister Diane has been worried sick about you. She never stopped looking." A flicker of hope crossed the woman's face, though she remained silent, the gun still pressed against her head. "Don't talk to her," the captor barked, his attention momentarily diverted toward Reeves. That split-second shift was all the opening Titan needed. With a command so subtle it was nearly imperceptible, a slight hand gesture from Reeves, the German Shepherd launched forward with explosive speed. He targeted not the captor's gun arm, but his exposed ankle, powerful jaws clamping down with precise force. The unexpected attack from below sent the man off balance, his finger instinctively squeezing the trigger as he fell. The gunshot echoed through the observation deck, followed by screams and the tactical team's immediate response. They swarmed the fallen captor, securing his weapon as Reeves rushed to Samantha, who had toppled sideways in her chair during the chaos. Blood spread across her shoulder. The bullet had struck her despite the captor's destabilization. "Medic," Reeves shouted, applying pressure to the wound while checking for other injuries. "Stay with me, Samantha. Your sister sent us. You're going home." Her eyes fluttered as shock began to set in. 3 years, she whispered, her voice raw from disuse. "I counted every day." The medical team arrived, quickly stabilizing her for transport. As they transferred her to a stretcher, she grabbed Reeves's hand with surprising strength. "There are more of us. Others they're holding to control their families." "Where?" he pressed, but her eyes were closing as the sedative took effect. "Warehouse," she managed before unconsciousness claimed her. "Near water." With the hostage secured and en route to Northwestern Memorial, the team completed their sweep of the observation deck. What they found confirmed Coleman's claims. Communications equipment linked to the airport's security systems, surveillance photos of key personnel, and most disturbingly, documentation of other apparent hostages being used to control airport employees. Ramirez coordinated the expanded search for the warehouse Samantha had mentioned, while Reeves checked in with the team monitoring Coleman. The doctor data transfer had been completed, buying them time while maintaining the appearance of compliance. But the true tragedy of the situation was only beginning to emerge. How many others had been forced into cooperation through similar coercion? How many families torn apart to serve Ascension's agenda? As they prepared to exit, a muffled explosion rocked the observation deck. The floor bucked beneath their feet as smoke began pouring through ventilation grates. Emergency klaxons wailed throughout the structure. "They've triggered the self-destruct," Ramirez shouted over the noise. "Everyone out now." The tactical team retreated through both exits, Reeves and Titan taking rear position to ensure no one was left behind. As they reached the service corridor, a secondary explosion collapsed part of the ceiling ahead, cutting off their primary escape route. "This way," Reeves directed, guiding the remaining team members toward a maintenance ladder that would take them down to the lower level. "Titan, come!" The German Shepherd held his position, barking insistently toward a partially collapsed section of the corridor where flames had begun to spread. "Titan, come!" Reeves commanded again, more urgently. Instead of obeying, the dog darted into the smoke-filled passage. Reeves cursed and followed, the heat intensifying as he pushed through debris. Through the haze, he spotted what Titan had detected. One of their tactical team members pinned beneath fallen ceiling panels, unconscious but alive. "I need help here," Reeves shouted, already working to free the trapped agent. The building's structural integrity was failing rapidly around them, steel groaning as fire consumed the aging materials. 2 agents returned to assist, and together they managed to extract their injured colleague. As they maneuvered him toward the escape route, another explosion ripped through the upper level. The concussive force sent Reeves and Titan tumbling as a shower of burning debris cascaded around them. A steel support beam crashed down, striking Titan squarely across his back before Reeves could pull him clear. The Shepherd yelped once, a sound that tore through Reeves more painfully than any physical wound, then fell silent, pinned beneath the smoldering metal. Without hesitation, Reeves threw himself beside his partner, hands burning as he struggled to lift the beam. The weight was impossible for one person, the metal searing his palms as he strained against it. "I'm not leaving you," he promised through gritted teeth, his vision blurring from smoke and desperation. The other agents returned, and together they managed to shift the beam just enough to pull Titan free. The German Shepherd's powerful body hung limp in Reeves' arms as he carried him down the maintenance ladder, refusing assistance despite his own injuries. Behind them, the observation deck was fully engulfed, decades of history dissolving into flame and ash. In the ambulance racing toward the Veterinary Emergency Center, Reeves cradled Titan's head in his lap, whispering the encouragement that had carried them through countless operations. "Stay with me, partner. Stay with me." The Shepherd's breathing was shallow, his once alert eyes glazed with pain. The preliminary assessment was devastating. Spinal trauma, internal bleeding, severe burns along his left flank. The veterinary team waited at the emergency entrance, immediately whisking Titan into surgery, as Reeves stood helplessly in the waiting area, his own burns untreated, the smell of smoke still clinging to his uniform. For the first time since his sister's death, Michael Reeves felt himself breaking. Titan wasn't just his canine partner. He was family, the one living being who had helped him rebuild his life after tragedy. Now, as doctors fought to save the shepherd, Reeves faced the unthinkable possibility of losing him too. The veterinary waiting room became Reeves' entire world for the next 12 hours. Every clock tick echoed like thunder as surgeons worked to repair Titan's shattered body. Bandages now covered Reeves' burned hands, applied only after Ramirez had physically forced him to accept medical attention. The FBI agent had remained by his side for the first few hours before duty called him back to the expanding investigation. "We'll find the warehouse," Ramirez had promised before leaving. "You focus on your partner." Dawn broke over Chicago, painting the snow-covered landscape in shades of pink and gold that Reeves barely noticed. His thoughts remained fixed on the German shepherd fighting for his life in the operating room. Memories cycled through his exhausted mind. Titan's first successful detection, the night the dog had curled beside him during the anniversary of his sister's death. The morning runs along Lake Michigan that had become their ritual, each moment a testament to the bond that transcended the typical handler-canine relationship. Dr. Sarah Miller emerged from the surgical suite just after 8 a.m., her scrubs bearing evidence of the night's battle. Her face, though tired, carried the composed expression of someone delivering difficult news professionally. "He's stabilized," she began, taking a seat beside Reeves. "The spinal injury wasn't as severe as we initially feared. The beam struck at an angle that distributed the force. However, he sustained significant trauma to his left hindquarters and internal organs. We've repaired what we can, but the next 48 hours will be critical." "Will he recover?" Reeves asked, the question catching in his throat. Dr. Miller's expression softened with compassion. "Physically, with intensive rehabilitation, he could regain most function. But, Officer Reeves, you need to understand, working dogs like Titan define themselves through their service. Even with the best outcome, he won't return to active duty." The words landed like physical blows. Titan had been born to work, his extraordinary abilities the core of his identity. What would life mean to him if that purpose was taken away? "Can I see?" he asked. Dr. Miller led him through to the recovery area where Titan lay connected to monitoring equipment, his powerful body now vulnerable beneath surgical drapes. Reeves approached slowly, mindful of the tubes and wires sustaining his partner. The shepherd's eyes remained closed, his breathing shallow but steady. Carefully, Reeves placed his bandaged hand near Titan's muzzle, allowing his scent to reach through the sedation. "I'm here, boy," he whispered. "I'm not going anywhere." To his surprise, Titan's nose twitched slightly, followed by the faintest flicker of his tail. Just one weak movement, but enough to kindle hope. Reeves had just settled into the chair beside Titan's bed when his phone vibrated. Coleman's name flashed on the screen. After the rescue of her sister, she had been placed under protective custody rather than arrest, cooperating fully with the investigation while awaiting determination of her legal status. "Michael," her voice was urgent. "They found it, the warehouse Samantha mentioned. It's an abandoned shipping facility at the South Harbor. Ramirez is assembling teams now." "I can't leave Titan," Reeves replied, looking at his sedated partner. "You need to hear this," Coleman insisted. "The FBI data analysts completed their full assessment of the evidence from the observation deck. They found something unexpected." She paused, weighing her words. The hostages weren't just leverage, they were test subjects. Test subjects for what? Fear response studies. Ascension wasn't just selecting targets based on security access, they were specifically recruiting individuals with family members who possessed certain psychological profiles. Another pause. "Michael, they were studying fear as a detection countermeasure." The revelation struck like lightning, illuminating the mystery that had plagued him since Titan's first alert on Harrington Kaiser. The dog shouldn't have been able to detect the device. "Exactly," Coleman confirmed. "The electronics were undetectable by design. What Titan sensed wasn't the device at all, it was fear. Specifically, the chemical signature of prolonged, extreme anxiety. Harrington Kaiser had been living in terror for months, knowing what he was being forced to do. That's what Titan detected. The pieces clicked into place. Titan's distinctive alerting behavior different from his standard explosives detection. His immediate focus on Harrington Kaiser himself, rather than his belongings. The way he'd reacted similarly to Coleman in the briefing room. Fear has a scent, Reeves realized. And Titan was picking up on it. Not just any fear, Coleman elaborated. The specific biochemical signature of someone under extended duress. Ascension had been systematically testing methods to mask it. Medications, desensitization techniques, even surgical implants to regulate hormone production. That's why they needed the hostages, to measure fear responses under controlled conditions. So when Titan alerted on you, he was detecting the same biochemical signature, she confirmed. 3 years of living under their thumb, knowing my sister's life depended on my compliance. It changes your body chemistry. According to the files, they were on the verge of perfecting a method to mask these stress markers when your dog ruined everything. Reeves looked at Titan with renewed wonder. The shepherd hadn't just detected a hidden device, he'd sensed the invisible fingerprint of coercion itself, the bodily evidence of souls under siege. It wasn't training that had enabled this, it was Titan's innate ability to analyze subtle patterns, the same quality that had initially made him challenging to train. I need to tell Ramirez, Reeves said. This changes how we approach potential suspects. He already knows, Coleman replied. But there's more. My sister regained consciousness an hour ago, what she revealed. Her voice caught. Michael, the warehouse isn't just holding more hostages. There's someone else there. Someone I never knew about until Samantha told me. Who? Margaret Chen. The name hit Reeves like a physical blow. Margaret Chen, O'Hare's airport director, the highest authority in the facility, with access to every security protocol, flight plan, and personnel file. The person Coleman had obliquely referenced as being higher than a pilot. That's impossible, Reeves protested. Chen has been with the airport for decades. Her security clearance is presidential level. She was taken 3 months ago, Coleman explained. According to Samantha, they've been using an imposter in her place, someone surgically altered to match her appearance, while the real Chen is held as insurance at the warehouse. That's why the security upgrades Chen supposedly implemented last quarter actually created vulnerabilities. It wasn't Chen at all. The implications were staggering. If Ascension had successfully replaced the airport director without detection, their infiltration of aviation security was far more advanced than anyone had realized. Every decision, every protocol change over the past 3 months needed reassessment. The raid on the warehouse is happening now, Coleman continued. If they can rescue Chen and the others, we might finally understand the full scope of Ascension's operation. Her voice softened. How's Titan? The mention of his partner drew Reeves' attention back to the sedated shepherd. Fighting, he answered simply. The doctors think he'll survive, but his working days are over. I'm so sorry, Michael. He saved more lives than we'll ever know. A pause. Including mine, in a way. If he hadn't detected Harrington Kaiser, if the plot had succeeded, my usefulness to Ascension would have ended. I'd have become a liability to eliminate, just like my sister now that she'd served her purpose. As they spoke, Titan's monitoring equipment began to signal changes, his heart rate increasing, body showing signs of emerging from sedation. I have to go, Reeves told Coleman. He's waking up. Of course, I'll update you when I hear about the warehouse operation. She hesitated. Michael, thank you for believing there was more in my story. Not many would have looked past the evidence against me. Titan taught me that, Reeves replied, watching as the shepherd's eyes flickered beneath closed lids. Sometimes the truth isn't in the documents or the data. Sometimes it's in the things we can barely perceive, but that doesn't make them any less real. After ending the call, Reeves leaned close to his partner, speaking softly as the dog showed more signs of consciousness. You've been right all along, buddy. You saw what none of us could. Rest now. You've done your duty. More than anyone could have asked. As if in response, Titan's eyes opened slightly, unfocused at first, then gradually sharpening as they found Reeves's face. Recognition bloomed, and the shepherd's tail moved in a weak wag. Despite his injuries, despite the pain evident in his posture, Titan's first instinct was to acknowledge his partner, the unbreakable bond that had ultimately saved hundreds of lives. In that moment, surrounded by medical equipment in a veterinary hospital far from the dangers they'd faced, Reeves finally allowed himself to weep. For his sister, for the innocents caught in Ascension's web, and for the loyal heart beside him that had seen through deception when human eyes remained blind. Spring came early to Chicago that year, as if nature itself was eager to wash away the winter's darkness. 6 weeks had passed since the raid on the abandoned warehouse, where FBI teams had successfully rescued Airport Director Margaret Chen and 7 other hostages held by Ascension. The operation had dealt a devastating blow to the terrorist network, with cells across 3 continents dismantled in coordinated international raids. Elena Vov remained in custody, her silence finally broken after evidence from the warehouse provided leverage for prosecutors. Morning sunlight streamed through the windows of Reeves's lakeside apartment as he carefully attached Titan's support harness. The German Shepherd watched patiently, his dark eyes following Reeves' movements with the same analytical intelligence that had once detected hidden threats. Titanium rods now reinforced the dog's damaged spine, and while his hindquarters would never regain their former strength, his recovery had exceeded every medical expectation. "Ready for therapy, buddy?" Reeves asked, scratching behind Titan's ears, his favorite spot. The shepherd responded with an enthusiastic head tilt, his tail sweeping across the floor in broad, eager strokes. After weeks of intensive rehabilitation at Chicago's premier veterinary center, Titan had finally come home. Each day brought small improvements, standing longer, walking farther, even managing brief, uneven trots during his physical therapy sessions. He would never again perform the demanding work of explosive detection, but his spirit remained undiminished by his injuries. Dr. Miller had explained it best during their final consultation. Dogs don't dwell on what they've lost. They adapt to what is. Titan's purpose now is simply to be your companion, and he's embracing that role with the same dedication he brought to his working life. The door buzzer interrupted their preparations. Coleman stood in the hallway, looking remarkably different from the tense security supervisor Reeves had known for years. The dark circles beneath her eyes had faded, her posture more relaxed, despite the monitoring ankle bracelet visible beneath her jeans, a condition of her release pending trial. "How's our hero today?" she asked, kneeling carefully to greet Titan. The shepherd welcomed her with a gentle nudge of his nose against her hand, a gesture of forgiveness that never failed to move her. "Getting stronger," Reeves replied, gathering Titan's therapy equipment. "The hydrotherapy is working wonders for his muscle tone. They're saying he might even manage short runs by summer." Coleman smiled, though her eyes remained shadowed with the weight of recent events. After extensive cooperation with authorities, she had been charged with lesser offenses than initially threatened: obstruction and failing to report terrorist activities rather than active conspiracy. Her assistance in dismantling Ascension's network had earned significant consideration from prosecutors, though the final legal outcome remained uncertain. "Samantha's doing better," she offered as they walked toward Reeves' SUV, specially modified to accommodate Titan's needs. "The trauma counseling is helping. She's even talking about going back to teaching next fall." "And the nightmares?" Reeves asked gently. Coleman's smile faltered. "Still there, for both of us. Some wounds take longer to heal than others." The drive to the Veterinary Rehabilitation Center passed in comfortable conversation, their shared ordeal having forged a friendship from the ashes of suspicion. Coleman had visited Titan regularly throughout his hospitalization, bringing treats and reading aloud during the long hours of his recovery. Her guilt over her unwilling role in Ascension's plots had transformed into determination to help heal their consequences. "Have you heard about Harrington Kaiser?" she asked as they neared the clinic. Reeves nodded. "Partial recovery. The paralysis is improving with treatment, though his speech is still affected." He glanced at her. "His family visits daily. The daughter, Maya, she brings him drawings from school. After everything he was forced to do, they still stand by him." "Forgiveness is powerful medicine," Coleman observed, her gaze drifting to Titan in the specially designed compartment behind them. "Some deserve it more than others." Upon arriving at the rehabilitation center, they were surprised to find Ramirez waiting in the lobby, dressed in his customary dark suit despite the warming weather. The FBI agent had maintained regular contact throughout the investigation's conclusion, developing an unexpected fondness for the German Shepherd who had broken the case. "Didn't expect to see you here," Reeves remarked as they unloaded Titan from the vehicle. "Official business, actually." Ramirez replied with uncharacteristic formality. "There's someone who wanted to meet Titan before the ceremony tomorrow." Before Reeves could question him further, Director Margaret Chen emerged from the clinic entrance. At 62, Chen carried herself with the dignified resilience of someone who had endured unimaginable hardship without surrendering her essential self. 3 months of captivity had left physical marks. She was thinner, her movements more measured, but her eyes retained their sharp intelligence. "Officer Reeves," she greeted him warmly. "And this must be the extraordinary Titan I've heard so much about." The German Shepherd studied her carefully, his head tilted in assessment before offering a gentle woof of greeting. "He knows his own kind," Reeves commented. "The survivors." Chen smiled, kneeling despite her formal attire to meet Titan at eye level. "I understand I owe my freedom to you, young man. Your remarkable abilities led them to the warehouse." She stroked his head gently. "We survivors must stick together, mustn't we?" After Titan's therapy session, which Chen observed with evident fascination, they gathered in the center's garden area, where spring flowers had begun to emerge from the recently thawed earth. The conversation turned to the upcoming ceremony at O'Hare, where the Department of Homeland Security would formally recognize those involved in dismantling the Ascension threat. "I've made certain your partner receives the highest honors," Chen assured Reeves. "His actions saved not only my life, but potentially thousands of others." "He was just doing what he was trained to do," Reeves replied modestly, watching as Titan explored the garden with his altered gait, determined despite his limitations. "No," Chen countered firmly. "What he did went beyond training. Dr. Miller explained his ability to detect stress hormones. That's innate talent, not something taught. He saw what humans had become blind to, the subtle signs of coercion that our security systems missed entirely." She glanced toward Coleman, her expression softening. He saw the difference between the willing participants in terrorism and those forced into compliance. That distinction saved lives. The ceremony the following day transformed the international terminal into a sea of uniforms and formal attire. Department of Homeland Security officials, FBI agents, and airport personnel gathered beneath banners commemorating what the media had dubbed the Ascension Intervention. At the center of it all sat Titan in his dress harness, surveying the proceedings with dignified attention. Director Chen's speech acknowledged each participant in the operation, from the tactical teams to the intelligence analysts who had pieced together Ascension's complex network. When she reached Titan's contribution, she departed from her prepared remarks. "In security, we often focus on technology, scanners, algorithms, biometric systems, believing machines can make us safer than human judgment. What Officer Reeves and Titan have reminded us is that sometimes the most sophisticated detection system is not built in a laboratory, but born with 4 paws and an extraordinary heart." Cheers erupted as Titan was presented with a custom Medal of Valor, which he accepted with characteristic poise, allowing it to be placed around his neck, before turning to Reeves with an expression that seemed to ask if he'd done well. "The best boy," Reeves whispered, kneeling to embrace his partner. "The very best." As cameras flashed around them, Reeves found himself thinking not of the ceremony or the accolades, but of quiet mornings to come, walks along the lakeshore, evenings by the fireplace, years of companionship stretching ahead. Titan had saved countless lives, and in doing so had also rescued Reeves from the isolation that had defined him since his sister's death. Some partnerships were formed in training, others were forged in fire. Theirs, he knew with absolute certainty, would endure long after the headlines faded and the medals tarnished, a bond between 2 survivors who had found in each other the strength to carry on. In this story of extraordinary courage, we're reminded that some bonds transcend words. Titan, a once unwanted German Shepherd, saw what humans couldn't, the invisible scars of fear and coercion. Like many of us who came of age in a world forever changed by September 11th, Officer Reeves carried the weight of loss, searching for meaning in a fractured world. What makes us truly secure isn't technology or protocols, but connection. The kind that sees beyond surfaces to the truth within. When life dealt Titan a crushing blow, he didn't surrender to limitation, but adapted with dignity, finding new purpose beyond his injuries. Perhaps that's our lesson too. As we navigate our changing bodies and roles, we're not defined by what we've lost, but by our capacity to begin again. The deepest wisdom comes through suffering, and our greatest strength emerges in vulnerability. Sometimes, the heroes who save us arrive on 4 paws, teaching us that resilience isn't about returning to who we were, but discovering who we might yet become. I hope you enjoyed today's story. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this. Leave a like and comment below what you thought of the story. See you in the next video.